The voice of sharing, dünya
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene and you are listening to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. Of course, this morning we will have our news from Southeast Asia. First off, we have news from the Bali 9. Of course, the Bali 9 duo were executed, and there were some views from Indonesia to retaliate why they do what they did. And according to according to this particular news, even though there were a lot of international calls for mercy, the Indonesian government has stick to their stand and executed the 8 people, including the Bali 9 duo Andrew Chan and Murand Sukumaran. And this is the second round execution under President Joko Widodo. Of course, he is popularly known as Jokowi. He justified the killings as a shock therapy to solve Indonesia's drugs crisis. I guess is a way of Jokowi of using stick and canes against kids. And in this case, kids would mean a metaphor for people who constantly it's a metaphor towards the drug industry or the drug syndicate in Indonesia, which is quite rampant. It's not just in Indonesia, but the whole of Southeast Asia. And at the same time, because of his stick and cane method, which is very Asian, I suppose, like very tiger mumly sort of way of thinking, unfortunately, in terms of human rights, he is not doing well. Indonesia has lost its moral standing internationally, given that it is also attempting to save the lives of its own citizens on death row abroad, especially in the Middle Eastern country. The recent one would be in Saudi Arabia, where it's trying to save one of its Indonesian mate who apparently were being charged for murder, and she would be executed any time around now. And this is I would say double standard. You're trying to save your own people overseas, but at the same time you're sticking to your own guns when it comes to your own law. In this case is the drug related crimes through capital punishment. But according to one of the Center for Strategic and International Studies researcher, his name is Tobias Basuk. He said that it has twisted and jumbled its own legal system. The Indonesian constitution maintains the right to life. However, beyond normative ideas of human rights and the rule of law, the sense of justice in Indonesia has been turned upside down. The right to life, interestingly, is part of Indonesia's constitution, but it hasn't been really upheld in the case of the Bali 9 or in the case of the death penalty against various drug-related crimes. And the Indonesian government has taken the lives of rehabilitated criminals. A petty criminal who was caught with just 50 grams of drugs and reportedly mentally ill person. The Indonesian government is wrong for arguing that upholding the death penalty is a matter of law enforcement. The death penalty actually derails efforts to reform the country's legal system. This is in accordance to Asmin Francisca. She's a lecturer in human rights at Atmajaya Catholic University. It seems like Jokowi's administration they have this attitude of shooting first and us later, even though there were many outcry internationally, especially from Australia. but nothing has changed in terms of trying to reform the legal system in Indonesia. The long-term implication, of course, is more than just human rights. It's about foreign policy. It's about Indonesia's stand in ASEAN. Indonesia has always been seen as a country that uphold universal principles in the past, but nowadays it seems like Jokowi is not really walking the talk. He seems to be more interested in becoming probably the next tiger mom. On the other hand, you have Australia recalling their own ambassador to Indonesia after cruel and unnecessary executions. This is what is being described by the Australian government. In fact, Prime Minister Tony Abbott, he himself described the execution itself unnecessary and cruel. He said that we deplore what's been done, and that cannot be simply business as usual. This is what Abbott told reporters at Canberra today. Mr. Abbott said that Australia's reaction could not be simply business as usual. For that reason, our ambassador will be withdrawn for consultations. This is what Mr. Abbott expressed himself. And regarding on Chan and Sukumaran, they spent their final hours with spiritual advisors after Indonesian officials backtracked on an earlier decision to deny them access to religious guides. The drug smugglers were executed by firing squad on an island of Nusa Kambangan, known as the Execution Island, along with 6 other death row inmates. A lot of people might not realize that, but when Chan and Sukumaran were being hauled up, that was 10 years ago. Both of them were just young youth, I would say misguided youth. One was 21 years old, another one was 24. So for them to be spending time in the prison for the last 10 years and still ended up being executed is really a step back towards human rights for Indonesia. And on the other hand, regarding on news about this Filipino maid, Mary Jane Veloso, who was, of course, at the 11th hour, President Jokowi somehow saved her, quote unquote, from the execution itself. An ASEAN treaty is helping to save Mary Jane Veloso as well. It is trying to convince Indonesia to delay the execution of Filipino worker Mary Jane Veloso. The Philippines invoked a key regional treaty to fight transnational crime in Southeast Asia. I mean, the reality is human trafficking, drug trafficking, it's not an Indonesian problem. It's a Southeast Asian problem. So for ASEAN to take matters into consideration, I think is a really one step forward for ASEAN, but it has to be done in a way that it can effectively address issue related to transnational crimes. And this is part of the Association of Southeast Asian Nation Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty. The Philippine Justice Secretary Leila de Lima said on Wednesday. Yesterday, De Lima suggested invoking the 11-year-old ASEAN Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty during a phone conversation with the Philippine President Benigno Aquino III. An ASEAN handbook describes the ASEAN Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty as a means to facilitate and enhance efforts to combat transnational crime in the ASEAN region. But how effective this would be? Will other countries comply with it? That's a huge question mark that only ASEAN leaders can answer this. And it obliges countries to help each other in fighting crimes across their borders. Under the ASEAN Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, parties should render the wildest possible measures of mutual legal assistance in criminal matters. Indonesia's delay on Veloso's execution, which was actually scheduled at 1 a.m. on Wednesday, on last Wednesday, because of Aquino's request for Indonesia to turn her as a state witness. And a lot of calls have been trying to persuade Indonesian government that it is better to rehabilitate and to take into consideration, especially victims of drug trafficking or even human trafficking, to be state witnesses rather than trying to persecute them, because the reality on the ground is the bigger fish out there, they are the one would be raking in the cash when it comes to drug-related crimes, not those carriers who are just earning small money for the sake of instant gratification. But when it comes to Mary Jane's case, that's a totally different issue, which is she was truly a victim in the sense that she didn't know what was happening. She happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So this is something that I think President Benigno Aquino III is doing rightly, and I think he needs to take this seriously. Especially, he needs to win the popularity vote in his country of handling transnational situation, and especially in ensuring that the safety of its citizen is being ensured. Anyway, we will take one short break. When we return, we'll talk about the South China Sea. And of course, we will talk about the new Cambodia re-election in 2008.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene. Of course, you are listening to me again back at our ASEAN Daily, where we bring you news from Southeast Asia. And to continue our news today, I think the biggest issue that has been the center of ASEAN Summit last few days ago would be the South China Sea. In fact, when it comes to Q&A between reporters and Prime Minister Najib, as well as other ASEAN leaders, the key issue that journalists were trying to sort of understand would be, what is ASEAN's position when it comes to the disputed South China, the disputed region of the South China Sea. And of course, if you follow the words or the speech of Prime Minister Najib Razak, you will realize that ASEAN leaders have been really concerned on it. In fact, Najib raised that recent development in the case of South China Sea have raised a lot of concern among ASEAN leaders, given that the importance of its sea lanes to international trade. He also said that it is natural that among almost any occurrence that happened there will attract attention. So ASEAN must address these developments in a proactive, but in a positive and constructive way. So you can see that when it comes to Prime Minister Najib Razak, he really want to address the issue. I think all of the ASEAN leaders as well, collectively, but in a way that you do not really offend China. But on the other hand, China is also extremely concerned by ASEAN statement on it. Chinese Foreign Ministry said that it was extremely concerned after leaders of Southeast Asia countries expressed worry of the land reclamations and navigational freedom in the disputed South China Sea. China's reclamation work in the South China Sea has become the latest source of tension with some of its smaller neighbors. Of course, that mentioned it would be Southeast Asia. And several of whom, of course, are also competing territorial claims in the water. The 10-member Association of Southeast Asia said that after a summit this week in Kuala Lumpur, that the reclamation work had eroded trust and confidence and may undermine peace, security, and stability in the South China Sea. But on the other hand, the Chinese Foreign Ministry Hong Lei said that China was extremely concerned that the closing statement addressed in the South China Sea issue, which he said was not a problem between China and ASEAN. On this issue, China exercised extreme restraint and repeating that China believed the dispute should be resolved via direct talks between the claimants. So what China is proposing right now is bilateral conflict resolution. It's not through multilateral means, meaning that China is not interested to resolve the disputed area of the South China Sea through ASEAN, but through individual countries that are involved or they are part of the South China Sea itself. In this case, of course, the obvious one will be the Philippines and Vietnam, but on the other hand, countries like Malaysia also have some stake at the South China Sea and as far as Taiwan as well. So this kind of complicates things because when it comes to the proposed I would say approach by ASEAN would be to respect international law, including the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, and must be basis of the rule of engagement and activities in the South China Sea. So Malaysia is hoping that they will achieve progress in their efforts towards the early conclusion of the Code of Conduct. But with China, they might not see it in that particular perspective. They are looking at it as resolving it through bilateral means. In this case, it would mean that they do not want to have the discussion taking place between China and ASEAN. The Chinese resolutely oppose individual countries making insinuation about China for their own selfish interests and taking hostage of the China-ASEAN relationship. This statement was added by the Foreign Minister Hong Lei himself. And in fact, he said that China apparently has a right to build on islands in the South China Sea. So there you go. Different states are singing different tunes about the South China Sea. But just a bit of a background. The South China Sea is not just, a sprinkle of islets. It's actually 90% of it believed to be rich in oil and gas, with overlapping claims from Brunei, Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam, and of course, as I said earlier, Taiwan. And recent satellite images show China have made rapid progress in terms of building an airstrip suitable for military use in the Spratly Islands and maybe planning another. While many of the claimants have built facilities such as airstrips on some of the islets and shoals that they occupy, China's efforts have been by far the most extensive and dramatic. So, dispute about how to address the increasingly assertive role of China, which is an ally of several ASEAN states in the strategic water of the South China Sea, is still very much a big question mark. But on the other hand, we also see that Cambodia is trying to persuade ASEAN towards another direction. Hun Sen urges ASEAN states to settle dispute directly with China. They are probably, being advisors to Chinese people. No, just kidding about it. But, what we are looking right now is Cambodia Prime Minister Hun Sen. He's pulling Southeast Asia towards the direction of being a bit more pro-China in ASEAN's foreign policy. In this case, they are singing the exact same tune that China Foreign Minister was mentioning earlier, which is to do bilateral conflict resolution. In an exclusive interview with Kyodo News, Mr. Hun Sen said that the best scenario is to let the parties directly concerned in the conflict, in this case the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia and Brunei, to settle their differences with China and leave the other states to take a rest, observe and advise. Otherwise, the 10 member states will not be able to resolve the issue. Take a rest. That's a nice word to say, quote unquote. And he also mentioned that what was being discussed in 2012 when Cambodia was the chairman of the ASEAN Summit, that other member states, is up to the other member states this year to remain, he said that it's exactly equal when a comparison is made on the settlement of the South China Sea when the meeting was held in Phnom Penh and later in Brunei and now, of course, in Malaysia. It's same. That's what he said. And Hun Sen also added that over the past 3 years, he saw little or remained silent. He said little or remained silent about the maritime dispute, but had observed other member states sharing their view and found that they had spoke with the same language. The Cambodian leaders say that he has observed the parties concerned, especially those that are involved in the dispute with China and are afraid to speak out whether they were in front of Beijing. When asked how he would respond to mass speculation that Cambodia is the proxy for China, the premier said there is no single country that does not have relations with Beijing, including those who have conflict with it. So China and Vietnam are considered tongue and tooth, and neither Hanoi nor Beijing can move away from each other, while their constant relations cannot be ignored. Vietnam has more business dealing with China than it has with other ASEAN member states. So actually, President Hun Sen do make sense in this case. It's just that people are still questioning Cambodia. It seems to be towing the line of China when it comes to a lot of the foreign policy, especially in relations with the South China Sea. On the other hand, another story about Cambodia, from the South China Sea, of course, to the re-election in 2018. So Cambodia's strongman prime minister is seeking for another re-election for the next 3 years. ASEAN's longest-serving leader, Cambodia Prime Minister Hun Sen, announced his intention on Wednesday to run for another term, warning that only his re-election in 2018 would keep the country from civil war. The announcement will come as little surprise to Cambodians who have heard the 63-year-old self-styled strongman promise to stay in power until he's 74 and also predict a descent to the dark days of conflict without him in helm. And Hun Sen will win again, that's what he said. That's because the victory is with peace like this. People don't have to flee and crawl. He seemed to be giving a warning sign to the Cambodian people that the future of Cambodia will only be better under him and not without him. And Hun Sen and analysts say that the former Khmer Rouge soldier who have been prime minister for the last 30 years appeared intent on building a political dynasty by promoting his 3 U.S. military-trained sons to top position in the ruling Cambodian People's Party, CPP, and the army. So he's definitely going to step down one day, but his sons is going to take over one day soon as well. So I guess Cambodia will always be under Hun Sen's shadow in this case. Hun Sen's rule has seen him cheated by right groups for authoritarianism, stamping out critics and using his influence over judges, police and media to stifle his political opponents. In fact, robust economic growth, job creation and sustained peace when an impoverished country roiled by decades of civil war have ensured Hun Sen's continued re-election, although experts say he's now faces with a strong challenge from rejuvenated opposition popular among urban youth. That's true. In fact, the opposition is so popular that many is actually predicting for him to take over the role of premiership in Cambodia. the CPP returned to power in 2013 with a greatly reduced majority after losing many seats to the Cambodian National Rescue Party. The 2018 vote is expected to be a close contest as well. A long dispute between CPP and CNRP over the 2013 election result was resolved last year, but there have been signs recently that the political truce may not hold. Hun Sen has been irked by opposition calls for a change in law to limit premiers to a number of terms. Yes, after 30 years, I think you should do that. In this case, if I were to question what's the outcome of the Hun Sen presidency, I guess in another word, it would be Cambodia needs some rejuvenation, and having an opposition leader to somehow test the water on how they are able to transform Cambodia would be a way forward, because at the end of the day, you want people to be able to have choices, to have the freedom to choose who should govern them. So I guess I'm speaking from an outsider's perspective, but from an insider's perspective, I guess Cambodians probably have been seeing Hun Sen for too long. They might need to have a change of view. But then again, all the best for the next re-election. May the winner win the seat and change Cambodia into a upper middle income country, just like what President Hun Sen has been promising its people. That's all from me today. We will continue our discussion on ASEAN Summit. We will do an in-depth analysis of what we saw, we see, and what we felt about the ASEAN Summit, as well as the key issue that was raised. Of course, the South China Sea would be one of the key issues. That's all from me today, and we will continue with Gauri, Grace, and myself on the durian heat.